All right, so that should give us some sound, hold us in balanced vibrations, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. It's another opportunity for us to connect. Obviously, this is Secret Energy Podcast, episode 5, and we're going to do as we always do around this time. First, I'm going to do a quick sound check. I know we started with no sound, but I did correct that, and so I'm just making sure that the sound is clear enough. All right, so some are saying there's still no sound. Let me work on that a bit more. Okay, 1 second. Okay, good. So we've eliminated the false positives. Now there is sound. So I'm just going to confirm that that is for sure what everybody's experiencing. And I'm just going to let it breathe for a moment. All right, so everybody's saying that they can hear. I'm sure some are just beginning the stream, so it probably was no sound for them when they first started, but now they'll get sound. So, let me just take a moment to get into the right alignment, which is, of course, for me, the center of the consciousness. There's always many things that are happening in our existence. As human beings, we seem to kick up quite a bit of activity. And so I just want to let everybody know we're available for answering questions about this reality and about the metaphysical aspects of this creation. And today, actually, we're going to do a bit of something different. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give some surface answers to questions. And then I'm going to go in a bit deeper and give a deeper subconscious answer to that same question where applicable, meaning that if the question will lend a deeper explanation, then I will give it that. And I feel like that's important because it allows you not to have to be what people call socially correct. And what that is that obviously there's an answer that people are kind of looking to hear when they even ask a question. And then there's sometimes what originally sparked the question in the first place, which is the part about whatever it is the question is related to that they didn't think about or that they don't know. And we're going to also look into the brain a bit and how the brain is configured in order to bring more clarity to why we ask these type of questions at times. And what I mean by that is that I've come now to completely realize that the consciousness in itself, as we say with the mind, and now we're learning not to separate any of these bodies that we're in, and we're looking at them all as a collective and a part of the same system. But we find inside of the consciousness that the brains are actually stacked and wrapped all around each other. So if each form of consciousness is in itself a matrix respectively, so this is the lizard matrix, a reptilian matrix, a mammalian matrix, and then a newer system called the neocortex type of matrix, but all stacked on top of each other, then we're to see then that the only thing that separates these realities and possible lives that we're carrying on in each of these realities is a thin film. And that this thin film is really, when we say we're having a breakthrough, is what is being removed for us to become more aware of another type of consciousness. And as I highlighted before, since a lot of our experience is based on just that experience, memories, new things, then when we come into that part of the consciousness, it feels like that we're experiencing something new or that we've gained some level of insight that wasn't present in the world before we've come to discover it. And what that can do is it can definitely catalyze the individual that's experiencing that. But I think that oftentimes some of the mistakes that we make, especially if we're trying to apply it to others and generalize, is one, to realize others have had breakthroughs. And then also that some always live in that matrix, if you may, that we're having a breakthrough into. So we sometimes wonder about these different aspects of the mind. Of course, the reptilian brain comes up a lot. And we have come to realize that many are actually functioning in the reptilian brain just because of their environment and just because even their genetic subset. And while others are in other parts of the consciousness more and act out and carry and think that way, act out, carry themselves and think that way. And so that's very important to come into realization of. So I think I've let this breathe enough. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Today also, we're going to have a giveaway. We're going to give away obviously a semester of the university, and we're also going to give away some regeneration salve, which is a very powerful product that we've pioneered and been carrying for about 2 years now. And it has 5-star reviews because everybody that uses it and uses it for several different things has exclaimed that it has not only corrected many of the issues that they're experiencing, but has been so, again, useful for other things that they did not know they can use it for. So this goes in a range of anything from sunburns to reducing inflammation to recovering from injuries to you name it, even mineral absorption. The regeneration salve and our magnesium products and formulas have been known to be very proficient in doing that. So we're going to give away some of that today, and I trust that maybe those that have received it will be able to leave a review and come back and tell others their personal experience. All right, so also what we ask is we ask that if you have a question, that you actually put question before your question, meaning actually typing question before your question, because it allows the moderators to pull out those questions and put them in line or in the queue of question answering. And even if we're not able to get to your question this week, it is in the queue, and more than likely it'll be handled the next week or the week after, depending upon how high the question queue stacks. But I think this is a very great opportunity for us to build a body of knowledge that's also labeled based on questions, because there's a lot of questions on the quest. So if I have videos that just say, here's the question and here's the time that question was answered, I especially think now in this day and age that will be very useful for the aspirants and the adepts that actually listen to this message, because they can actually just skim that and see if there's something that they want to know about, because many things they're already aware of, or sometimes they just want to hear what is my point of view on it. And I see a thumbs down already. It's like, dang, I didn't even say anything yet. So, hey, that's how it is. It's different strokes for different folks. So here we go. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. The last question that we left off. Well, actually, also, I wanted to speak to actually this past week very briefly. In the past 2 weeks, as we've gone into the Sagittarian full moon, or new moon, excuse me, and just the energy that's kind of brought around, and maybe some confusion that people have about some of the things that they saw in their dreams and some of the things that they may have experienced. Now, I personally use my body as the way of reading my own horoscope. I just have enough spiritual knowledge and wisdom and experience to be able to match what it is that I'm seeing in the dream plane, or what kind of symbols I'm seeing around me in the reality, colors, shapes, smells, numbers, whatever, and kind of synchronize the energy that's moving through. And I like to do it that way first, because then if I compare it against maybe something someone else is saying or even someone else's experiences, it allows me to dial it in a bit more, and it also allows me to weed out anything that may be vain repetition, meaning when someone else is just reading horoscopes or something that they found from someone else and they're just saying this is supposed to happen, and maybe that information is not exactly exact. So because of that, I noticed that this full moon actually brought in a bit of what we would call dark energy, meaning opening up some of the possibilities and the potentials of if things get off balance and don't go well with the forces that we sometimes see as distorted. And many of us actually either saw that in the dream space or experienced that personally in our lives with some huge polarized upset that brought in some energy that wasn't necessarily welcomed in our normal systems of balance. I like to call this the power check. And what I mean by that is I feel like when you become an adept, you become aware of that there are energies such as the sun and the moon and other planetary systems that carry essences with them, that when they're coming through, it's best to just have things in line to be able to synchronize with the energy rather than stand in the way and kind of get knocked out by the energy. So I feel like that, let's say that Saturnalian or 8 force came through, which checks power and brought many low And it tends to, if you have built some huge structure and you're imagining you're more than you really are, it kind of power checked you and in a humbling way. And sometimes one feels like they need to start all over again when that happens. However, when we really, really look into this knowledge, which is really looking no further than self, it actually brings me to a work that I've been reading over a progressive period. Because, of course, many of us actually have quite a few different books that we're reading. And some of those books got some real, length on them, like, one of those 400 or 500, even 700 page books. And so it takes time to actually read through the book. And one of these books that I've actually been reading is called Guardians of the Sun Door. And I'll show that really briefly here on my screen. And this work was actually put together by, let me close out some of the stuff here, Ananda Kumaraswamy, okay? And in this work, which I find, it's actually on the internet for free, it's in quite a few different places, the discussion is actually in relation to what we know as the cherubim. And also I like to have the conversation to include those who may be just listening to this in audio. So I'll be doing a bit of descriptive explanation if I'm showing something on the screen, just for those that are viewing this on the podcast in the future. And what this book is actually about is not only about things such as the Sphinx, but basically symbolism that actually shows this dual side or dual nature to the reality. And let me show a little bit of that here. As you see, this is a chimera, which has always been seen as in itself a cognate of several different components all blended into one. The Sphinx is also like that. As we know, the Egyptian Sphinx is a chimera, or it is a mixture between several different beings. However, there's always an emphasis on two polarities or two opposing forces, as you see it here again. And these are all coming from rather old texts, as you can see with the literature, with the illustrations. Once again, we see this same kind of motif. Same kind of motif again. You would think we get it, but common sense sometimes is not as common. But what this motif is actually showing us is that there is, in fact, and of course there's always a floating point. As you see, there's two opposing forces or poles, and then there's something in the center that is attempting to balance those poles. And these are none other than diagrams of the brain, which is actually very important. The brain also gets played down these days because many people think that the brain just has to do with thought. And then there's this emphasis on just working with the heart. And then here we go again in that common good versus bad, or which one is right and which one is wrong way of approaching knowledge, which never renders any true wisdom, but only gets us locked in deeper into some form of conflict. And so as we see with this symbolism, it's saying something, and it's saying something over and over again, and it's saying it throughout cultures, that there are two poles or two aspects to the consciousness that are opposed to one another. And if you notice that in this book, it says on the top here, the guardians of the sun door, and this chapter, which is rather long, is titled the Sagittarian type. Okay, and that's actually what I wanted to just bring up at this point. You can, of course, check out the book at your own leisure. Maybe someone will share the link even in the chat. But the Sagittarian type, and us actually just going into this Sagittarian new moon syncs perfectly for what is really seen when one starts visualizing or experiencing things that are exactly opposite to what they think that they're dialing in or bringing in or even deserve to experience, etc. They get like an opposite or a sudden change, right? And what that's really connected to is it's connected to exactly what is being revealed here about the two different aspects of the consciousness. And us, of course, in polarization, wanting to predominantly remain in one side of our consciousness. And that's, of course, which one we prefer. Different strokes for different folks. Different people prefer different things. You may assume that everybody wants to stay in what you would call the good side of the brain, and that would be your first error, because what you would call good would actually be bad to another type of being. And so in this sense, this is specific to you. And if you're experiencing something that, let's say, is a pole in itself, like right now in the reality, let me give some examples. We're clearly in predominantly I-ness or left hemisphere matrix, meaning that the overall collective programming that we are sending into the matrix because of things like consumerism and things like the financial markets and, disasters and catastrophes that happen, religious preferences, all these things, contrary to what most people think that they would bring us together, they actually pull us apart in many ways. But that pulling apart is also a very powerful part of our consciousness. If you were to understand this properly, it's actually the part of our consciousness that is assigned to the Inus, which is the left hemisphere. And it's important to bring this up because the Inus is also a pioneer. It is symbolic to the sun within itself. It's actually, even when we start using solar calendars as our form of reference of time, the Inus, or the I, becomes way more important than the collective or the everything. But see, the issues with both of these hemispheres should actually be really pronounced and seen by the aspirant and the adept alike. And it's clearly that the Inus does produce newness, just like we always look at the sun as being something that brings in new energies and that new things are associated with it. So too in the other hemisphere of the brain, the collective, if you may, there's often never anything new. And this is the repetitive side of that aspect of being totally collective. This is why you see in many collective cultures, you find them actually, and of course this corresponds to the moon, in many collective cultures you find many rituals taking place where everyone is participating in the ritual. And in these rituals, everyone is dancing together and making the same gestures. And if you've ever entered into any of these societies, you'll find that if you come and introduce anything new, like, hey, maybe we should go in the other direction when we're doing a dance, or maybe we should change the color or the type of skirt, it will be rejected immediately, and you will be, I guess not punished, but at least told that, hey, our ancestors did it this way, it worked for them, it should work for us. Let's never change it or try to make any changes to it. And of course, if you look at certain traditions that really function more on this lunar aspect of co-creative work, they'll also always say things like you should never add or remove or take away from any of these texts or scriptures or rites, etc. And so each of these hemispheres actually have a benefit. However, they also have withdrawals. And what I feel now personally in my own studies, research, and experience is that the reason why we were given a neocortex and even a corpus callosum is to actually begin to learn the lesson of being not only androgynous in the metaphysical rites, but also being able to become a referee of being able to determine the benefit of each aspect of the consciousness and when to use that aspect of the consciousness. Not so much as to suppress one side of the consciousness and to never explore that side of the consciousness because one side is actually better, because that only leads to polarities. And when one is polarized, what happens is when there's a power check, which is basically a pole shift, police actually are cognates of this, but that's like the modern aspects. Police are pole shifters. They come in to mediate situations. At least that was their original job. Same things with referees. Referees, of course, wear black and white. These are the two colors of the polarities. And they come in and they govern between two of these different teams, whether it's the red team or the blue team. And so this corpus callosum and this neocortex is literally saying that our parents have redesigned or enhanced the creation in order to give us another matrix to begin to use to perceive what exactly is happening here, and also to allow us to grow into a realm that consists of both of these poles working in harmony, which is called enlightenment. Everybody that has practiced these traditions for this period of time should know that you're actually working to collapse all of the chakras into one field, to bring all the opposing forces and energies together in a sacred marriage. And then enlightenment happens because now you're able to fully communicate as a whole-brained consciousness, and then you actually come into the awareness of things that others knew not. And this is a fact. So those who are arguing about that kind of thing are actually still on that other side of their awareness. They're still actually in the seed-like neophyte form, and they actually haven't come to experience this or to truly accept this, which generally takes some level of maturity. And of course, it's not a fast thing, meaning that however long it takes for this to happen, then that's how long you'll have in time. But then once you allow it to happen, or you're able to configure your consciousness to where it's happening, then you're able to access what we will call outside of time, which is the place where all the memories and all the actions are kept that have ever been done within this reality and under the sun and under this cosmos. And one can load those images and pictures and codes clearly and even dive into them and experience them as if it was yesterday. Okay? So let me take a look real quick and make sure that everything is coming through clear. All right, great. So everything is clear. So with that being said, and getting into this balanced state of consciousness, of course, again, what the power check is that if you are polarized, oh, I'm so good, I'm the nice one, I'm humble, wham, Mack truck. Or if you're super dark and everything is, going to be under my control and I'm going to, bam, Mack truck. And that's what's going to happen in the lives of those who actually even just went over this last cycle and they weren't balanced enough. Because then what the energy does is it actually attempts to correct those imbalances. And this is how the cosmos has been conducting itself for time memorial, right? I think we would hope that the consciousness in the conscious community sometime is not what's actually governing the overall cosmos and what's to happen in our planetary sphere, because oftentimes there's a lack of knowledge and even a lack of maturity with some of the things that are presented. And we're going to talk about one of those today. One of those is soullessness, and hopefully I can get to that in the sea of questions that I have. But there has to be, let's say, an overarching form that does come and put the smack down from time to time. Now, I also wanted to bring light to just this aspect of the realization of the role that the parents do play, because I think that is actually confused a bit in itself. And this is because, like, as parents, we think, and this is as speaking as a parent, we sometimes think that we're actually the creators. And let me put myself together here, that we're the creators of these children, right? And maybe that's the term that's actually used, the creator. So we've actually said nothing wrong yet, and unless we denote that a creator is the originator, which is not true, okay? So the creator, let's say, is tasked with the responsibility of bringing the progeny into this actual reality and actually to watch it, to take care of it, and to, like a farmer, govern it so that it can actually grow. But to insist as a parent that you were the origins of blood, and you were the origins of cells, and you were the origins of blonde hair, black hair, you were the origins of the eyeball, and all of these different things is a bit foolish. So meaning that when we create things, let's say I have a child, her name is Ara, I created her, but did I create the skin? Did I create the blood? Did I create the cells? Did I create all those things? Am I cocky enough to actually think that those type of creations should be accredited to one being, or that they're a part of the collective? And of course, they are a part of the collective creation. Everybody, if saying that they belong to them, it belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to one single person. But I wanted to make this very clear, this denotation, because it'll help you in your process of thinking about when you're even really focusing on the ancestors, or even saying your honorings, to still what their role is and how there is a collective that consists of all of us together, a congealed form of a synthesis. And it's sometimes that we're actually referring to as the supreme being, but in our mind, our parents and our ancestors come in place of that. So that could somewhat lead to a gross error. It is a stepping stone. We do kind of perceive things like an external God first, then a parent that is more closer to us. But now the next stage is obviously coming to the awareness that no one is the originator of specifically one being is the originator of all these things. It's actually everything collected as a totality that could even take on that title. So again, I wanted to make that very clear, because one can confuse parents for having the responsibility as the originator, and that's just false. So moving on from here, I'm going to actually start answering some of these questions so when we can move along, because I find that many of the questions always bring me into what I wanted to talk about anyway. So instead of just going on as a monologue, then I open it up as a dialogue so you can ask questions and then I can answer them for you, and we can grow that way. So the first question here is actually, is there a destiny for an individual as well as humanity as a whole. How does free will work into this, okay? And this is once again that paradoxical aspect of the reality where we insist that everything is already governed, but we also insist that there is a free will. We insist that each individual has a destiny, but we also insist that the collective has a destiny. And then when someone says, well, which one is right? Anybody with wisdom will say all of them, because that is the nature of the paradox. So now it's just important for us to explain a little bit more in depth about what is the difference between the individual destiny versus the collective destiny, and what fits into those parameters. So let's just say in this tense, and let me get my stuff queued up here to pull up some things that I feel like will be very instrumental in answering a few of the questions that are going to come along today. And actually what I'm pulling up, especially for just the listeners that hear this in the future, is actually a page that is on the Secret Energy website, and all of the stuff that we've been putting into this new site in order to actually give you the tools necessary to go forth. If you click on this right tab, you'll see that there is a tab called Cosmic Energy, and it leads to this page that we're looking at here. And what this page is, which we call the Cosmic Calendar, is about the energies that are coming across every single day. And we've discussed this before. We've discussed the importance of this. We actually do this pretty much every podcast, but it is so important because some have actually been looking for this knowledge for thousands of years. Others have been looking for it their entire life. Others are looking for it and don't even know that they're looking for it. And then others have it and don't actually know the value of it, meaning that they know how to get to this page, get to this information, but they don't see how it's relevant and important to their lives. But in my experience, it actually is very important, and it means quite a bit to our growth and our awareness of not only how to get into ultimate communication, meaning learning how planetary systems and energies and resonance really communicate with one another, which will also give us greater success in our endeavors in life. If you ever try to communicate with something or someone and you don't know how to communicate with them, there's a wall there. So this is like you going into another country, you don't speak the language, and you're trying to ask a simple question. It won't be so simple, actually. It'll be rather complex because you're not speaking the same language. And so because there is an essence that we found that is rolling through the planetary system that we've been able to narrow down into the archetype of the 9, which we're calling Ennealogy. And then there's also knowledge and wisdom out there, such as the Droidish numerology system that actually had this knowledge for thousands of years. We're now bringing that knowledge forth because it has always been our goal to actually search for universalism, something that we can actually use as unifying components. And despite there's no one size fits all for everyone, we actually found that when you blow that number up to 9, that you miss no one, meaning that everyone fits into these archetypical aspects of the creation. Now, we've been doing some deep diving into this in ambassador training so those who want to know more about it and even get more information than what is presented on the site thus far, because we're still integrating Ennealogy, then you can actually enjoy ambassador training and learn more about yourself today. So what this is about is this is about that, because the question is in relation to this destiny or individual destiny. How this works is, let's say, for instance, today is Sunday. Now, I can actually begin based on just these. Let me see, what are the words that I'm looking for? So based on these criteria that I'm showing here, I can actually blow this out into about 1,000 different criteria, meaning that if I have colors, I can now start ascribing even certain plants to this energy. If I have metals and I know the molecular makeup of that metal, I can actually begin to see what metals are more harmonious. And then also, if I have the metal, I can test the vibration, so I can actually see what kind of vibration is more harmonious. If I have the gem or the spectrum of color, then I can actually see the range of the frequencies that are being worked with, gamma rays, and et cetera. And if I have the herbs, then I can also learn how to dial into the space, because I can actually meditate using those herbs and actually see what those herbs reveal to me. And of course, if I have the planet, then I can actually drive it into an archetype, which is actually very important, especially since we're storytelling folk. Meaning stories help us remember things that otherwise would be way too complex for us to remember it from each individual detail. So we create these stories, and each part of the story, if it's told correctly, matches up to the essence or the energy in which that archetype carries. I'm also telling you that any story that has ever been told that has been memorable, or like, let's say, in a movie that has been Grammy Award winning, etc., they always will include at least 7 to 9 9 of these archetypical planetary energies, because everyone will be triggered by those energies. Everyone will even be triggered internally because of the energies that they play within themselves, and also that they predominantly play in the reality. And then they'll feel like that there was something about that flick or that film that really resonated with them overall, and then they'll give it a thumbs up. And then, of course, the further a person deviates from this, then the more the movie or the publication will suck, and others will downrate it and not feel like it actually connected with them. And that's really how it works. And that's the type of knowledge that we're talking about here. And of course, I have the chakra in many tenses. I have the territories. I have the direction. So with all of this, I'm building a world. And the interesting thing about this is that this is just one path. And we know that after every path, just like a sequence, another path starts. So when we're saying destiny, what we're really saying is that if you're on this path, the destinies of these particular energies would apply to you. Okay, that's what's being said by destiny. Okay, and then when we say collective destiny, what we're saying is that when you're adding all of this together, and then you come up with a summation, or like, let's say, for instance, when you add all these numbers together, these are the days of the week, 1, 2, 9, 5, 3, 6, 8, you get 34. 3 plus 4 is 7, and that gives us 7 days of the week. So this means that the matrix that we're in right now predominantly exists with these energies working as a synthesis. So the destinies of these energies, when they're all collected together, actually becomes the collective destiny. But here's what we figure out about destiny and why it has tiny at the beginning of it. And that's because it's just a small part of your existence. That destiny is in itself just a small aspect of the creation, because there's truly no end. And destiny seems to hint like that's going to be the end. We take that word as meaning that way. It's your destiny, meaning this is what you're supposed to do in conclusion, and that's going to be it for you. And that's, again, a gross interpretation of the word. Destiny is just referring to a path or a sequence that you will follow because you're under the influence of certain things. And then this is where occultism comes in, and esoteric knowledge, because we find that we can alter destinies, we can alter the path, even personally and even collectively, by moving around these numbers and these colors and these energies and in these vibrations into the places in which we feel like that is going to be more harmonious for us. So we have two aspects of what's going on here. We have a destiny where if a person doesn't know their destiny, they kind of go into it anyway because it's like running on autopilot. And then we have these adepts that basically understand all of these components from the experience that they have in their lives, and of course occult knowledge that has been written by other adepts. And then what they're capable of doing is shifting the vibrations and energies in order to actually benefit from the futures that they would like to benefit from. Also, one of the primary uses of such knowledge is when you're already aware of what's going to happen and you're not just sitting in the neophyte cockiness of that you can control every single thing, what you really would do is actually prepare yourself for what's going to happen and actually put yourself to where it'd be some type of balance or benefit for you. Okay, so for instance, when I already was seeing the signs that the power check was coming, instead of looking at others and looking external, I looked at myself and said, do you need to be power checked? Do you need to compress, this tower that you have built to get ready to get it prepared for next year? And sure enough, when I looked into my own house, I found that I needed to bring some of the energy down. I needed to actually compress that energy. I needed to change certain things about my intellect, certain things about what I felt like I believed, certain things about even my diet, and very hardcore components that I exist with that I felt like built up my last state of consciousness, but always being adept enough to know that we have to go back in and make a very sober estimate of what we're creating and start debugging it, even if that means taking it apart and building a new one. And even the website is a testament to that, because I actually took down a website that I felt that had finally got to the level of it working, but I still felt like that it wasn't working completely the way that I felt would be more beneficial for the reality that I'm living in and those that are actually coexisting in this reality with me and sharing this tool. So I tore it all down. Now, someone else that may have that same site may say, well, I've already spent X amount of dollars, X amount of time. We've created all of this and we're going to have to get rid of it. No, I'm not going to do that. And then the power check happens where you lose it anyway, or something goes on where you can no longer deal with it anymore. It's no longer functioning. And then you're forced to actually then go and try to build a new one. But guess then what happens? You get out of sync. You literally need to basically wait for the next bus to come around that is going to carry you into the energy or into the space that you missed getting to last time. And that throws things out of sync. So to stay in sync, you look at things like the cosmic calendar and the energies that are moving through in order to be able to, again, make a sober estimate of yourself and how you're going to fare in these new waters that are coming, and then make the proper adjustments. But if you're polarized, this becomes almost impossible, because the polarized state of consciousness, it only insists that in most tenses that you're right, especially if this is a solar condition, in this case, that you're left. And if this is a solar condition and that you know everything that's going on, there's no reason to make any details. And it's all about me, 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 and I. And that's pretty much what the state the person is in before they get hit. And so this is the answer to that question about the difference between a destiny versus a collective destiny, and how free will comes into this. Because obviously free will comes into this because you have these choices. And those choices don't just break down to whether you're going to eat cornflakes or bacon this morning. These choices actually break down to the colors that you're wearing. They break down to the people that you're having in your environment and what they're resonating. They break down to all the things that you see on these charts of correspondences, and then also the things that are not here on the charts of correspondences that correlate with the things that are being presented. And that is your free will, which is your free will to choose what part of the wheel you want to turn things into. So look at it in itself. It's a wheel, just like on a steering wheel. So your will is not so much as being able to do just anything that you want, because you can do that. That's what do what thou wilt is the whole of the law means. You could do anything you want, but is it really wise to do that? So this is the thing. That's what the adepthood and the maturity is really about, is making the decisions of how to turn the wheel in the direction in which you find will be balanced. That's also another thing. The I-ness can often tell you, well, this is what I want to experience. But if it's not the time or the place or the energy to experience that, and you force yourself into it, you're going to be polarized. So instead of asking yourself what it is it that you would rather experience and that you would rather prefer, it's easier to ask yourself, how am I going to come into balance? Because when balance happens for you, anytime a pole shift is occurring for everyone else, it's not occurring for you. You're actually benefiting from the shifts that are taking place. So I trust that that should be very clear. The next question is, can you give some examples how to use direction, territory, and numbers on the cosmic calendar on a daily basis? And of course, I actually just did that right now. You would view what is the day of the week, and then you would resonate. And this is, of course, why we do this. And I guess I will answer a little bit more about what this question is pertaining to. And it's basically that now that you know that this knowledge about what energy is coming across, because we have the cosmic calendar here for you, why would you want to dial into the resonance of the day? Okay, and there's a few reasons here. One is variety. Okay, and this is what, I was getting across even about the diet, which may come up today, may come up next week as far as some of the questions coming in about that. But basically that if you don't have a variety of things that you're experiencing, then you get polarized, your body gets polarized, and every single thing about how you're perceiving everything starts becoming a product of that. So what you're consuming on all levels through all your holes, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, etc., if you're polarized and you're always consuming the same thing, then it actually gets you only seeing through that lens. And this, it becomes, again, a gross error in the reality, because to insist that everybody is seeing the world through the same lens is, it's not going to work out for you. And this is why many run into conflicts. Versus if you're looking at every single day of the week and then you know the correspondences and you're changing it up, especially with the colors. You're changing it up with the incense and the essence and the smells. Basically, you're changing up the environment. And also what you're doing, because we're constantly moving, is you're guiding your celestial boat into these different waters where you're going to have the experience that corresponds to those areas. And then when you leave, you'll leave with the gifts of those areas. So there'll never really be this thing like, well, I missed out on doing this, or I don't know how to do that, or I wish I had a relationship with that. None of that stuff will happen because you'll actually be in this full spectrum state of awareness. But if you wear black every day, or if you wear, or if you eat the same substance every day, or burn the same herb every single day, what happens is that you're polarizing your environment, and then you don't have the variety to actually begin to interpret many of the things that are around you that are full spectrum. So that is the benefits of utilizing this knowledge, and how you use it is pretty self-explanatory. Like, you can actually orientate things in a certain direction during certain days that may be a bit more complex. You obviously can choose to make it a bit more easier with getting dressed in the morning, because you just look at the colors of the day. You know, sometimes it's a real thing to try to get dressed in the morning. You're like, man, what should I wear? It's easy to go to the cosmic calendar and say, okay, I'm gonna ride with this energy. Why? Because then you'll be moving with the force of the energy that is coming across the cosmos. And when something tries to interrupt that, it gets power checked. It's like it doesn't allow, it's so powerful. It's like basically standing in the face, in this case of the sun, and trying to stop the sun from moving across the sky. It's not going to happen. And that's what it would be like for others to come against that energy. But also it allows you to have a reference, if you may, of what decisions you should even be making. And in the day, you'll also get these clues. It'll be like, a long time ago, there was this video game that this light would appear, and you would have to have quick reflexes so that when the light appears, you go in that direction. And that was actually Space Ace, very old game. But the reality here is that if you are in tune with the reality or actuality, you'll see these different things that help you throughout the day in making decisions. So you could be in front of a decision and be like, you're just stuck, like, which one should I do? And then you'll notice that one of them is written in red ink. And let's say, for instance, it's Tuesday, which Tuesday's color is red and burgundy, etc. And so you would immediately think more that maybe this is the one that I should choose, because it actually is into the resonance of today. And that's how it really works, because the environment is constantly speaking to us and constantly resonates these vibrations. Now, this knowledge was also buried because there was an adamant action that continued to happen in the past with removing people off of the synchronicities of their life and how they really connect with the cosmos in order to get them out of balance. Because then once a being is out of balance, they not only don't have power, they also are easy to persuade and easy to manipulate. So this is the purpose of the cosmic calendar and its use. The next question is, what is do what thou wilt? And I actually explain that. And again, I have to paraphrase the end of that with saying, is it always, is do what thou would is the whole of the law, meaning that you could do what you want, but as an adept, is that what you should be doing? And that's the actual challenge that comes to those who use those statements. Do you think that you would be excluded from the laws of what some say are karma and dharma, and the vibrations and the resonance and the frequencies and the energies that are moving across, just because you can do what you want to do? No, you would still reap what you sow, but you can have the ability to do what you want. And that's what that statement is actually about. This next question is what are your views on homosexuality? And this is kind of like a two-part question. I have to answer it from the surface level, and then I have to answer it from the deeper level. And so the surface level is actually, it doesn't even matter. And that's the surface level answer to that question, meaning that since I'm not a homosexual, nor do I want to be a homosexual, it would be very difficult for me to explain somebody my views about homosexuality and be accurate about it, because it's not something that I aspire to be or really aspire to understand completely in that way. Like, I work with occultism. I really want to understand everything about that. So that's why I have so much knowledge and awareness and experience in that arena. But something that I don't have any knowledge of and don't desire to get involved with, I would have a minuscule amount of awareness on something like that. So I wouldn't be the best person to ask. I would probably go and ask a homosexual and ask him what is, or her, etc., what is their views on that and why they do that. And then do like a survey, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks of different people. And then you would come to a better conclusion version of the answer in the surface level of answering questions. Now, the deeper level of answering this question actually more has to do with another world, another realm of entities that actually themselves are all masculine. And in this, what I'm referring to is that the book that I asked everyone if they had time to read, which is Alien Wombs and Alien Spirits, was a deep dive and a very sober approach to the realization that there is another group of entities here on the planet, some known, also known by some as the Zayrin. Some also know them as the Jinn. And that these entities, while being very similar to and carrying on lies very similar to the type of lies that we carry out, especially from a social level, are still in themselves very different because of the type of geometry that their realm was created with, and even the essences and the components, which actually are the geometry, that was used to create them. And because of that, and this is why it's always been seen that spirits, if you may, are masculine while the flesh is feminine, and this has nothing to do with the male or female human being, but that the spirits are masculine and that the flesh is feminine, that these beings are actually polarized to the masculine. So then what happens, because the Zayrin, as there's so proficiently recounts in any ancient cultures that know about them, have recounted several times, are very interested in human life and human activities, and can seem to benefit on a consistent basis from knowing things about what's going to happen here and actually changing things that are going to happen here. And many occultists actually work with these kind of energies, and these energies are always searching for occultists to try to interlope with, okay? However, and this is what many that have gone down these paths seem to exhibit, is that once they make pacts with these entities, and they're numerous, this entity then latches onto them from behind, actually in an act of what we would say is homosexual behavior for a male, meaning that this entity will actually latch onto a male and actually make the male prefer males more. And this is because of their world being different than ours. You notice how in this world, a female and a male is necessary to produce life. So in their world, those components are not exactly the same. So what they introduce in this realm is a culture where there won't be a production of life, because you cannot put two males together and create physical life. And then also there is an extreme emphasis on externalism. Externalism means that a person who is consistently searching for something outside of them, not inside of themselves, but something that's outside of them to give them pleasure, to give them acceptance, etc. And so what you would see then is for someone, and this is, I won't say in all cases, there's never an all case answer to anything, but in many cases, what you'll find is an extreme extroversion when one has taken on these kind of aspects of their reality, meaning that they'll need to consistently get approval from everybody that's around them in order to feel like that they're doing the right thing and that they're okay. And so this is, the in-depth aspect from an occultist level of what a lot of the homosexuality sometimes steers around. And remember, because everything is an energy, and we're just only highlighting one aspect of it, there are many energies that are moving around constantly that people are interloping with, co-creating with, and making agreements with, because these energies utilize, just as we utilize every other energetic form as a form of communion, which is also the sacred form of consumption, which is in every tense what we would call eating, meaning that we are interlocked in this reality into a consistent form of what we would call consumption, where every energy in this cosmos is consuming another energy in order to make a transformative energy. You see this in alchemy, you see this in daily life, you see this with your own consumption. Even breathing air is you taking in a certain essence, what we're calling oxygen, and then transforming it into another essence, which we call carbon dioxide, and then that essence being used by the trees, and then them continuously taking that essence and then turning it into something else, and also other chemicals that we don't even really utilize or don't utilize as much, such as nitrogen, etc. So this process of consistent connection, co-creation, and interloping goes on in the reality. And the only thing that you can really do to begin to govern what's eating you, somebody said, hey, what's eating you, man? I see something's wrong with you. What's eating you is actually the essence that you're vibrating. So notice how some people don't actually like to eat certain foods, like even the cleaner foods. Some people don't like that. They may like to fry foods and stuff all the time, right? And so when it comes time for the broccoli to hit the plate, then they're like, oh man, I don't want that because it doesn't taste good. So that's their preference. So too, energies actually function that same way. And so when your energy, and also, I need to make this very clear, those who you always like the energies that you're most resonant with. Okay, so when you're carrying a clean field, the energies that are consuming with you and consuming you are also cleaner energies. And this is like, again, I'm just using terms that we have, right? So I'm just saying, if you start consuming a certain kind of lifestyle, the energies around you are also the ones that like to consume that lifestyle. So you can't think that, oh, well, the dark beings want me to be clean and balanced because they want to eat clean and balanced beings. No, that's not how it works. Dark beings, if you may, we're using this term, distorted beings like to eat distorted energy. So if you start giving off a distorted vibration, then you're going to have distorted entities around you. So of course, that could come into controversy with what a lot of people believe and what they think is going on. But that is, of course, the difference between the neophyte versus the adept. The adept knows what's happening, and the neophyte is just insisting that they know, even though they may have no facts. And this gives us the facts about energy and consumption. So the next question is, could you please give your recommendation for vegan creatine? Okay. Creatine in itself being an element is something that you can actually go and just get by itself. So I'm not sure exactly why we would want to find necessarily one with the title vegan on it. This is like saying that the water is vegan. Creatine you can find in different forms, and there is a creatine that is not made from animal stuffs. So that's the creatine that you'd be looking for. The next question is, why do I feel a kind of fascination and attraction to the dark occult knowledge? This is the easy one. It's because the other hemisphere of the brain, and remember, there's other parts of the brain. I can't say it enough. Let me look for my chart really briefly here, because there was a recent, I won't say discovery, I would just say a reassertion. I just have to go to my Facebook page real quick about that there being that, first of all, it said that we have a triune brain, which literally references that there's only 3 brains. But what I found is that there's actually 4. And that somehow, I guess in the notations of when they decided that there was only going to be 3, when the 4th one they decided not to make that edit. And actually refer to a lot of the things that we do in the reality as being directly a part of what we would call the reptilian brain, when in fact that's actually a part of the lizard brain, because that is another aspect of our consciousness. So let me click this open really quick and blow this up here, and here we go. I'm gonna do a quick screen share, and what we're looking at for the listeners is we're actually looking at a brain or our brain, exactly, not a brain, okay? And what we find here is we find the neocortex, or the new brain. So it literally insists that this is a brain. We have the limbic system, which can sometimes be omitted as being a brain within itself. And then we have the reptilian brain, and then we have this lizard brain, okay? And I'm bringing this up because what happens is that certain parts of this consciousness, like for instance, the reptilian brain is fascinated with the unconscious, right? And then the lizard brain seems to definitely be the oldest brain and is actually attached to more of our primal aspects of how we came through life, which was actually, we came forth from darkness. It's very clear that many beings came forth first from the darkness, and that many of the things that relate to darkness, such as owls, wolves, and all nocturnal life forms are actually cognates of that particular aspect of the consciousness. And due to this, and because it is a part of our consciousness, but it's often maybe not focused on by specific subgroups, that what happens is there becomes this thing where one feels like I need to know more about that, because really what is being said is I need to know more about that aspect of myself. And it's very fitting to call it darkness because it is the most obscure about self. Some of the things that are even very uncomfortable, like for instance, we talked about how killing is, someone made a statement, and they said that basically if anyone, and we were all in a group, and they said if anyone actually had to kill an animal to eat it, then we would see just how basically that was even something that we would even be able to do, which is that most people these days wouldn't be able to actually kill an animal if they had to eat it. I mean, if they had to kill an animal and then eat it to have it as a meal, then they wouldn't use animals as a meal because they wouldn't want to kill it, okay? However, that actually is still a direct product of the reality that we're actually living in now and the environments that we're raised in, because animals are fed directly from the store. All the things that you want, from macaroni and cheese, whatever, comes in a box. But versus back in the day, if you were on a farm, then if you didn't take one of these animals through their transmutation process, it meant that everyone was going to perish. So you see how sometimes we have to be very wise about, well, what stage and what age and time are we talking about? Because all these times and ages are existing now, all in the present time. And truly, to kill is an ordainment, meaning that for a being to actually have the right to take another being's life, then you actually have to ask for permission. That's why there was these honorings. And then there was this awareness that then when you did that being, especially if you consumed it, would then live through you. And you were supposed to honor that being's life that you took by bringing it into a greater level of existence through the actions that you were making. And that you were disgracing this being, i.e. an ancestor, a primordial form, if you lived out in a way in which that did not give it reverence. Okay, so these are the ancient laws around this. So because of this, what we find again is that there's an extreme obscurity to the dark aspect of the consciousness because we're in the I-ness. So notice how in the I-ness, and that's why I'm saying everything breaks down to these two categories now. Because we're in the I-ness, it's all solar. It's not dark, it's light. Versus in the subconscious mind, right, the lunar side of the mind, which corresponds to the moon. When do you see the moon the most? At night. All the nocturnals, such as the owls, the wolves, wolf howling at the moon, etc., is more prevalent. And those who actually are more gravitating towards that aspect of their consciousness are actually more interested in what we would call the dark occult knowledge. However, we now must put another disclaimer here that most of this knowledge that you're finding now, the modern knowledge, is actually distorted, meaning that there's a supreme distortion that is actually going on with the knowledge where it's been edited, it's been changed, and what has been created is something more of a horror movie rather than the truth about what the dark side really is, how it corresponds to the consciousness, what kind of past did we really come from, where did we emerge from, what was life like then, and all the things that correspond to it, who walked forth from the shadows first. All of those different components are omitted, and then what's put forth is the killing, the raping, the controlling others, and all the other things that are very forked tongue in a way. Because yes, the subconscious controls all subconscious minds. So you can see how this kind of knowledge would give someone control over everything, versus with the I-ness kind of knowledge, it kind of gives one control only over themselves, or in a very, it's more emphasis on controlling oneself rather than trying to control everything. And these are the two worlds that we actually exist in every single day. You'll find people that are polarized on one of these fields or another, and then you'll find some that have risen into the supreme state of their consciousness by actually standing in between and being, like I said, the referee between both of these poles and saying, so which one is going to be the best for us to either exhibit right now, or as an alchemist, what is the fine blend between these two energies for us to get something new happening, and let's pioneer a new path into our futures, okay? So this next question is, what do you personally do in a lucid or in the lucid or astral plane? And this is personal, okay? And what integers do you use to get acclimated there? I know how to get there, but can you give me personal stories? Makes it real motivational, okay? And this is, again, this is, just going in deep into the subconscious, right? Like, we always need some kind of reward to do something. And this is one of the things that I've highlighted now as an issue with the consciousness overall, including mine, that I found that in life that I put myself through extreme conditions because there's a sequence that goes on in the mind that says, once you are punished or suffer or do without something for a prolonged period, once this occurs, you now then deserve a reward to receive it or to get something that was a result of what you did. And this is none other than a chain of thoughts within itself, where if you just removed all of that from in between, you would go in a supreme mind from whatever it is that you felt that you wanted to experience right to the experience, not to a process or a procedure where now you must bring yourself into a certain level of aesthetic in order to benefit from that. Now, again, I want to be very clear. It is very important, especially for people who are not disciplined, to go through this process because they need to know how to back off for a moment and then reward themselves from backing off. But in the adept state of consciousness, this is not really how things function. You actually remove that component because it actually cuts down a drastic amount of time, which is necessary if you're planning on doing what people would say is instant manifestations, right? But also you can see why you wouldn't want people who didn't know about how to control themselves and know about the powers that really reside within them. You wouldn't want them to have access to this kind of thing because they would just manifest their own destruction right away through making mistakes. And since we all make mistakes, as I said before, in the laboratory, you make mistakes first so you can calibrate where the balance is, even in the tools and also in the experiment. In fact, even when you're getting positive signs from an experiment or something that you're conducting, you actually try to mess it up so you can try to get a field of the experimentations to where you understand where is the balance and what are the extremes, okay? So we're all going to make mistakes, but because of this way that we've been working, because we see how the DNA works, it takes it, it stores it, it packs it, it goes and gets some more. These kind of actions, because of that, we have to see how that would play out in real life with the things that we would be perceiving that we should do in order to get certain rewards. So the answer to this question is, what do I do on the astral plane? I observe. I do not interact with the astral plane because the astral plane is really a part of the subconscious consciousness. It's the lunar aspect of our existence. And because of that, if you notice that all subconscious beings watch and observe and learn from what is being displayed rather than trying to jump into it. Because see, that would be like, that's waking life. The moment that you jump into it and try to change it and not move it around, that's consciousness, right? And that's why most that try to do that, they can't seem to remain lucid for but a moment if they grab into it because they immediately try to control it. But that's another side of the brain. And so for me personally, I found that the best benefits that I have of dealing with the astral plane is just observing the astral plane when I have the opportunities to go into those states, whether that's in meditation or whether that's in sleep, and then reflecting against what I'm seeing to understand what it's trying to tell me. So I sit as a student in the astral plane, not as one trying to conduct things in the astral plane. So it's personal here, so I can only, meaning they said, what do I personally do there? So that I only can answer it in that personal way because that's what I do. I observe. The next question is here. Yes, sure. I think I need to turn the brightness down a little bit over here. Give me just a quick second. Also, let's take a quick moment and let me just refresh myself, get some water, and we'll come forward with the remaining questions for today. And yeah, let me pop this on real quick, and then we'll come right forward. Wholeness.
There are unknown forces that don't want us to realize what we are truly capable of. They don't want us to know the things we suspect are extraordinary about ourselves are real. I believe that if everyone sees what just a few people become when they wholly embrace their gifts, others will awaken. Belief in oneself is contagious. We give each other permission to be superheroes. We will never awaken otherwise. Whoever these people are who don't want us to know the truth, today they lose.
I know what this is. This is the moment we are letting on the universe.
But as we raise in vibration, as individuals do, they see more, they become more, they are more. For those who are not going to become more and bring out the best they can be, it means by joining the consciousness of the universal creator's mind. As you do this, certain facilities within your body will begin to function better, dreaming in color, precognition, knowing somebody's going to call and they do. All these things are showing you that you're going forth. If these things are not happening, you're going backwards. And that can be from the bad food, from being ignorant enough to take the shots, thinking that the shots can help you, and even the very air we breathe. Now they're putting chemtrails up into it, which contain titanium, barium, and aluminum, and that's bad for your body. So everything on this planet is being worked for bad. But the Creator has said, the planet has said, I want to be good. So for all of those problems, there are solutions. There's ways of cleaning up the chemtrails. There's ways, as I say, of taking out the bad things in the food, cleaning up your water, cleaning up your brain, your mind, and your soul. The thing is, you have to want to, have to be disciplined enough to do those things you know are right, if you understand who you are, and make this a better place.
All right, so we're forward. And all right, so we'll keep going with this because there's quite a few questions here, and I wanted to get through this next stack because that's kind of how this works, is that we get through a whole stack and then we hit into the next week. Let me just take a question. Let me just see here. Okay. All right, cool. So we can just keep going through this. All right, so the next question here is there a deeper meaning to numbers and corresponding days? I was born on the 21st, which is 3, and it corresponds to Thursday, which is, of course, Guru. And interestingly, I was born also on a Thursday. Is there something I am missing at all? And no. But the question here is that basically there are quite a few correspondences, and this is how you dial into yourself. And what I'll say about this is that imagine if I just sat here and I told you everything about you. How exciting would that be, seeing that it's coming from in an external format? It's so much more enjoyable and useful when you actually experience it through yourself. And so what we've given is we've given the guidelines on how to do that. So if you're a 3, you're able to go to Thursday, and then you're able to see those correspondences, and you're able to start dialing into that space more and learning more about yourself by actually being in resonance. So if you know that you're a 3 and you were born on Thursday, they call that like a double power. That means that you are more of like a 3 than even the average 3. And because of this, that you would find all these different insights and synchronicities within the repository of knowledge that's been made available about the 3, which of course is Jupiter. And again, I can only say, since we're still incorporating Ennealogy into the platform, that we are going through a lot of this knowledge, and some of this knowledge is available in ambassador training if you wanted to join and know more about yourself from that respect. But then also you have these charts of correspondences, which is the cosmic calendar. And if you start putting that in your environment and start shaping your environment around the things that you know resonate with you according to these instructions, then you'll have all these different insights, whether through your dreams, in your meditations, in that what you would call deja vu, in those times where if you're smelling a certain scent and it seems to bring back lots of memories, all of that would happen because you're actually dialing into the vibration that you truly are. So that's what I would welcome you to do with yourself. And I think that that's when it would be the most impacting. I guess maybe there's notations of questions being placed elsewhere, but I did want to make sure that we were getting the questions that are coming through today somewhere, and I know the moderators will handle that. So that way, when we do finally get to those questions, that we can actually begin to answer those questions. So I just want to make sure that the questions that are coming through today, because I do see them here, are actually being notated somewhere so that we can get to them next week. And so I trust that they are, so I'll keep going. The next question is, can you go into the 9th and 7th dimensions and how the 8 seems to be a possible repeating bridge? Okay. And now, since it says dimensions, I wouldn't be able to tell you about the 9th or the 7th dimensions or even the 8th dimension. And it's because, just quite frankly, who do we know that we can actually say has been, and they can actually say to themselves that I was on the 9th dimension and this is what happened? I think that the conscious community is doing a lot of that, like, oh, I was on the arc bridge of the angel and this is what it, and then just be totally lying about this. And what this is causing is it's diluting the knowledge that we actually really know about. And it's also making us focus on things that are not necessarily solid enough for us to even put focus into. So I can't really speak on the 9th and the 7th dimensions, because even if I was on them, there wasn't like a sign that said you've now reached the 9th dimension. But what I can say from a numerological level, because that's what's also mentioned here, is in numerology. So in numerology, the number 9 is the planet Mars, and it's a protector. And it actually doesn't come in the final aspects of the sequence inside of our matrix. It actually comes as the 3rd aspect. So we get 1, the sun, 2, the moon, and then 9, which is our day Tuesday, which is the Mars. And it's because that, as we talked about in the sequence, sun being the synthesis, or like itself a seed, compact, everything all contained in that point, but needing to be broke down. Then the moon comes in because it's the divider, it's the division component. It can break things down. It refracts the light, and then it refracts it like a mother will break down something very coarse like meat into a liquid for the child that's inside of her stomach. And in this process of growth, which is a gestation period, and this is why, of course, also the moon has a lot to do with time and the days of the week and the cycles, right? Even the menstrual cycles, etc., all correspond to the lunar body. This is because that time is now taking place, because now basically it's got to hatch. But when that process is happening, you can't just leave it exposed. You have to put a guard around it. So Mars is a cognate, at least in my level of understanding metaphysics, the cherubim around the garden, meaning the protector, the outer shell around the egg. Okay, and that's actually what 9 correlates to. Versus 7, which is actually the tail of the dragon. It's basically the aspect of the moon that corresponds to the side that is visible. So there are two numbers, by the way, that are missing from our days of the week, for those just tuning into this. And that's number 4, which is Rahu, and number 7, which is Ketu. And these two energies correspond to the poles of the moon, respectively, meaning the visible side, which is Ketu, which is known as the tail of the dragon, and then also Rahu, which is number 4, which is what we would call the dark side or non-visible side of the moon. And so with the number 7 and its intuitive aspects and pursuit of spirituality and consciousness is constantly in a sense fulfilling many of the things that we are looking, it's carrying the body of what we're experiencing within our subconscious mind, which relates heavily to our spiritual aspects and ways of being and our overall goals in life. And then when we have 8, and I'm just explaining them not necessarily in the context that the question is being presented, like 8 being a repeating bridge, not sure what a repeating bridge is. I would hope a bridge would repeat, seeing that if something is going over it, then it would remain there. But actually what 8 is 8 is a governor in every respect, meaning that because it is the last number in the sequence, it comes after 6. And then now 8 comes. 8 is the law. 8 is bar, right? 8 is Saturn. It is the rule. It is responsible for even concluding, like the end, killing things, etc., removing them, and things that take a long time, gems, the correct way to develop wealth, etc., wisdom, anything that takes a long time to develop, then that is what 8 is assigned to. So that's, my understanding of it and what I've also seen being emitted from the planetary bodies. And I feel like all of them play in many respects bridges to each other. And ultimately, you would need to summarize all of the knowledge in order for you to actually begin to bridge all of these states of awareness. And so that also means that if you really prefer one teaching over another, or you're polarized in some way with seeing that Saturn's the bad one and we need to get rid of that, then this is what it would mean to break a bridge, because then you would actually take this knowledge, which has been being used for, a countless time, and then you would actually begin to break it apart and try to create your own. And that, I won't say it can't be done, but never reinvent the wheel. This is what they say, meaning that if you find something that's working perfectly and you see that each of these are archetype in a story, there's not actually really any other part of the story that you can come up with in an active matrix. So because there must be sadness, which Saturn, the number 8, often corresponds to, that it does go through the sadder times and it can endure those times, right? But in the story, you don't really find, except for the moon, to actually really bear much of the vibration of sadness. So this just means that in the story, there's a necessity for sadness. Smile now, cry later. So who is going to be responsible for actually carrying out that role? All right, somebody raises their hand. Okay, check. Now we have that archetype. Now we also need jovial. We need happiness, right? And that's obviously Thursday. And any time that there's an imbalance, meaning that if you're on Thursday, but you find yourself being unhappy a lot, that means that you actually are a bit out of balance for your path. And when you restore your balance, you will come into that natural awareness of how you can use your path specifics as your power. So someone would say, well, is there a power in sadness? Steadfastness. Those who become prone to sadness but learn how to endure are actually the most dependable people. This is why Saturn oftentimes became the base pillar. Everybody standing on the laws or the rules, because it was straight, it was time tested, and it was sober. Saturn is also seen to be sober, meaning very not trying to joke and kid with you, because it's like holding up a foundation here. Versus if you find a Saturnalian drunk, which is in a lot of the occultist systems that say that they're Saturnalian, which we talked about within themselves, turning things upside down, then you can find them completely imbalanced in their path because they have not perfected their path. So what we're seeing is that each path has these archetypes or characteristics, but they're actually powers. So no matter what we could think as being a drawback, it's actually a power. And also remember that just because you may be a number 2 or 4 or whatever, you have all these energies actually moving through you. You are a cosmos. What this is about is your first lesson is to learn yourself. You got to learn yourself before you can learn anything else. So here is a manual for this version of self that you're into. Now, once you learn that, then it's easy to move on to other aspects of self and learn how it all works, because it's the same formula that you use to figure out your initial self. So nobody is actually stuck on a specific path. They're stuck on the first lesson, though, meaning if you haven't graduated complete awareness of yourself, that's why a lot of people ask this question, who am I? I think my whole purpose of life is to discover who I am. You're absolutely right. However, because you're everything, it's best to start off with something finite, a small morsel, a bite, a piece, one day of the week, one planet at a time, and then master that and then move on from there. And this is the advice that I can give to anyone just starting this, or may have been in it for a bit of time but hasn't reached what they would call adepthood, is that you have to spend the time in mastery. Like you have all the time in the world, literally. Like you have existence after existence. You have infinity. And that's another thing that I was realizing, even with now being at this stage of maturity, is that when you live infinitely, and you know that, you move totally different than if you think that you're going to die. Okay? A person, when they think that they're going to die and that everything is going to be over, it's very similar to a person running a short race. They try to do every single thing that they can within that small space and allotment of time. Versus the person who knows they have infinity, they pace themselves. So if I know that I'm going to have to run for infinity, I'm going to run totally different than if I thought I was going to have to run, just a small, couple yards, 100 yards or whatever. And so just always remember that in our consciousness, we get this thing that wants to rush us along and you better hurry up. You're going to be too late and all this kind of stuff. And then again, because it's a paradox, it's good to give yourself those kind of benchmarks, especially if you're a lazy person and you're a naturally slow moving planet. You have to be like, okay, get the stuff done, but still remember that you actually have all the time that you need. So don't go so fast that you break something is what I'm saying, because many have done that, trying to actually get into or inherit something and do that so fast and right now that they've even damaged themselves and distorted even the path that they're actually on. So it's just word to the wise about, the being long in the tooth, I guess they call that, as far as how you're approaching your life and how you're approaching what you're to be learning about self and how much time you really have to do that. So the next question here is, as we are in a multidimensional universe, is our soul fragmented between our different incarnations, meaning that if one soul is trapped in the dark room, are all other selves also trapped? Okay. And what I'm starting to really see again within this terminology and within the construct of our consciousness and how we're being taught to use our consciousness is we sometimes refer to states that we're supposed to be in and we're not correct about those states, right? So again, for me to insist that I'm trapped would put me in a trapped position, because what I'm saying is actually manifesting, and that because I'm the controller of my own existence. So I have to be very careful about what I'm saying that I'm actually in. And then also, if you have a hard time doing that and you actually really do feel trapped, still remember that if you're observing yourself as being trapped, you're actually doing that from another point where you're not trapped, because someone that is trapped is experiencing a trauma in which they cannot even be aware that what they're experiencing is what is going on, i.e. a trapped person doesn't think that they're trapped. So if you're observing yourself as being trapped into something or in a state of mind or in a state of consciousness, which very well can happen, still remember the most empowering thing is that you're already viewing that from a stage of not being in it, and a simple juxtaposition allows you no longer to be trapped. So use words very carefully about what you're saying is going on with your soul and your consciousness. Now, what is happening, and I'll bring you the analogy here, is that we've discovered or explored just about as much of the divine feminine world that we're in as we've discovered personally the use of the chemicals and the essences and things that are here, and likewise what the feminine is capable of doing. And so let me break this down. So what I'm saying is individually, not collectively, because a lot of times when we say, well, we've already cracked the speed of light, or we already know what the atom looks like, and we already know, and then we speak as if we speak as though you know. Like that you have seen the atom before and that you know what nitrogen and boron mixed together does, and that you know how to break down silver into an alchemical component. And that is not true. You don't know how to do that. You have to learn how to do that. You have to go into that exploration. So this, of course, is the danger of the collective. As I said, there's pros and cons, because in this collective state, we're like, we already know what, and it's like, but you have no experience in that. You're just admitting that others out there know, and you're saying that somehow what they know is a part of what you know, but that's not what's actually happening. It's a very paradoxical reality. So how much you know specifically about these chemicals and elements and things that belong in this divine feminine, which is the planet, how much you know about that stuff is about how much you've really explored. Likewise, even let's say for the masculine, which is not just the male, but the actual divine masculine force, has explored the divine feminine about the same amount, meaning that as you've personally been able to explore it. So all of these things that you've yet to come to realize, like for instance, let's just take our beautiful sisters. When you put them all together, they all synchronize. They start actually having the same cycles on the same day. Then they are very subconscious. They're naturally tapped into the subconscious or lunar fields, which gives them another level of power. And because they have wombs, then they're capable of bringing physical wombs. They're capable of bringing physical objects into the reality rather fast by using this collective power. Now, how many men do you know have been able to completely explore the benefits in the use of something like that? That's about how much. So so what happens is that if we're on this thing where we're trying to like discover so much knowledge and wisdom, but we're constantly being distracted from how we truly get to that level of knowledge and wisdom, then it wouldn't allow us to reach it. It wouldn't allow us to penetrate it. And so that's what I'm really getting at right now for everyone here, is to realize that the reason why we came here and that we're in these experiences is to explore. We find ourselves the most happiest in the most timeless state when we are exploring. If you can remember even the times that you've experienced in history or in the past of your life where you went on some level of exploration, especially with friends or explorations into self, those are generally your greatest times of awareness. But then we somehow get caught in another world where exploration is no longer allowed, where everybody seems to supposedly know everything. And then everybody speaks in this collective, like what someone else figured out is exactly what they already have figured out, even though they never went through the experience themselves. And we have to be careful of that, because your personal exploration is your personal growth. And then when you start realizing just how much you haven't explored and seen yet, you will actually start restoring happiness back into your life. And this could have a lot to do with why you haven't gone out of the country in a while, why you don't actually study other languages, and things that why you haven't studied chemicals, why you haven't really looked into animals and seen how their brains are put together and how their vocal boxes are put together, because all of that is exploration of the divine feminine. And because we still have so much to explore, I don't think that the divine feminine journey of exploration is going to end anytime soon. I don't think that the parents are going to conclude the venture, because you actually haven't discovered as much as what's in this universe or university yet. And if we keep getting distracted with these half-baked concepts that keep being fired out by the communities or the overall collective conscious community, which is under heavy manipulation and bombardment, then we never get into the exploration of the divine feminine aspects and what it has to reveal to ourselves, us. And again, that's for male or female human alike. Okay. Now, the next thing is that just in answering this question, is the soul fragmented? So now, let's imagine that since all is self, you're divine feminine and masculine, but you haven't actually really discovered much about or explored much of yourself, what fragmentation would be is that small part of what you've discovered about yourself so far. That's what fragmentation is. It's just that there's only so much of you at all that's even aware, and you go into exploration to become more aware of who you are. And this now brings me into making sure that I speak to this thing that I keep now. It's hitting the conscious community. Now people are texting me about it. Now it's on my Facebook. People are asking me the question. And this is about soulless beings, because now it's trending. And they got this concept of soulless beings rolling around everywhere in immature people's minds, as if they would really be able to do anything else besides create some form of judgment with this kind of tool. So now they've been armed with another tool of judgment called soulless beings. So the first of all, the thing is that who is responsible for actually determining which human has a soul and which human is soulless? Okay, because you can imagine how that whole interaction would be. I would walk into the place and then all of a sudden cast on everyone there because maybe they were playing, I don't know, they were bowling and eating hot dogs. I would assume that at this stage, according to these theories, that these people are soulless because they are not pursuing these higher aspects of consciousness. And nothing could be more towards bringing yet more division into the consciousness, because this same exact idea, whether even the people who are quoting it right now, existed at least 40 or 50 to 60 years ago with the concept that it was actually, in this case, white people that were soulless. Okay, and this is interesting because I found that the people who were actually spreading this rumor, which I've been watching for a minute and clearly see their affiliations with other agencies that keep trying to shape the ideals of the conscious community into more division, these same people are actually white. So it's interesting for me to think that if they ever found out that the same thing that they were spreading, which is a lie, was the same thing that caused so much dissension in them to even be looked at by other races, as if they were the ones that didn't have souls, they would see just how silly that all is. Because now we have white, black, brown, any color you can think of brothers and sisters all coming into different stages of awareness. So are white people really soulless? Does that even make any sense? So now to then assume from there that there are soulless human beings running around is extremely callous. What you actually do have, though, is people that have only explored a certain amount of their consciousness, that through certain circumstances and situations, mostly due to environment and other prejudices that are rooted within this same kind of theory, people haven't had an opportunity to get out and truly explore. They feel afraid. They feel like they should stay in their social norms and their groups. And even when they get older, they repetitively, because of how the brain is designed, carry out these non-significant tasks day after day and never really grow who they are. And when we grow who we are, when we explore this soul, which is this divine feminine and the divine masculine components of the reality. So the less they have of that, the more it's going to appear that, A, they lack soul or awareness of who we are and how we're really connected and what we can really do in this space. So I just wanted to make sure that I spoke towards just that concept, because I see these dudes, they pop up, they come up with these concepts, then they come up with a story. We're great storytellers. This is a paradox. So truly in rhetoric, this is what they talk about with Socrates and Plato and all of them, that if you let them talk, you were going to lose anyway, because you couldn't stand in the paint. A person who has a very broad vernacular and a strong grip on linguistics and body language and those kind of things, they could be trying to tell you should kill yourself. And somehow in the end of the conversation, you may just, because if you listen to that and you didn't have the stance and the wherewithal right away to know what was really happening, then you would be influenced. So it's important for us to realize that common sense is not common. People can actually paint stories that seem to answer questions that we may have, but just because that has come forth and it seems like that's the truth to the matter, it doesn't mean that it always is. And oftentimes, generally, if it involves divisive components, things that are trying to separate you from another, and even trying to encourage you to try to figure out which one should be separated, this is all a waste of time. And you'll never explore who you truly are that way. So that's what I have to say about just the whole concept of soulless beings. And then also the concept of trapping oneself into other dark spaces in the womb, etc. And how all that really rolls out in the consciousness. Because indeed, if you don't have a vernacular and an explorative component and wisdom from those explorations, you will feel limited. And that limitation is what we would say is trapped. But to free yourself, go into the explorations. Also, powerful techniques as we come to a conclusion here with today's show. Powerful techniques are actually remembering the things that you have done in the past that brought you happiness, and try to go to the earliest one that you can as possible. Meaning that find things that you did even as a child, moments that you went through that actually brought you happiness. And it's because the reason why you want to do this is you'll notice in the I-ness, remember the I-ness is the lonely side of the consciousness. You know how sometimes people say we are one, and that sounds great, but it ain't true. We're actually zero. And because people can't perceive that, it doesn't even sound right. They're like, oh, we're all one. Actually, no, we're not. We're all zero. Now, what one is the lonely number. It is the sun. Okay, that's the one that I'm the only one. That's the side of the consciousness. My name is X, and everyone shall fall down and worship me. Blah, 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 blah. That's where that side of the consciousness is, how it really functions. And again, it's useful for certain things, but can be disastrous in other things. And so we have to remember that if we're coming from that perspective of I-ness, and then we're trying to interpret things that are happening in the reality, we're going to be doing that from a limited filter or lens. And I'm going to keep coming with what I was saying, but I'm going to keep going with the question because I want to get to a certain benchmark here. So right now, we have this question that says, can you address the value of the use of the tattvas? Should we live by this philosophy? Okay. And I guess first of all, if you're going to adapt a philosophy, I don't think that you should really ask anybody, should you adapt it? Because there's so many of them. So what literally would happen in all of this is that you would keep being introduced to different people's philosophies. And if they didn't astringe it, meaning try to synthesize it as best as possible, that's why I love working with Ennealogy, because it allows me to synthesize things. I like working with this dual component of the brain because it allows me to explain everything from these trinary aspects of how things work and then get a full picture of what's happening that's also easily conveyed to you. You experience it also in your life. So it should be also easy for you to explain. But with the tattvas, which I'm not saying anything negative about, but wow, the aestheticism, meaning that I like to look at these kind of forms of awareness like sometimes straitjackets. At the end of the day, what can you do? Meaning that there becomes so many different notations about what you're not doing the right way. You just start actually developing, and that's what I wanted to get to here just now, was you develop this what would be rather limited, kind of morbid, lonely state of consciousness where you're not having fun is what I'm saying. It becomes like the straitjacket where it's like, okay, well, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, and I need to do this in order to begin to inherit this level of awareness. Now, what happens if there was a joke played where somebody actually listed 500 things? And only if you accomplish these 500 things would you ever reach nirvana. How many people would utterly fail at trying to accomplish that? It would be a lot. So it seems like to me, especially when I look at many of the altered traditions, meaning somebody else literally moved in, philosophers, Confucianism, all these different things, and started creating tons of rules. It's like looking at the Judaic approach to determining how many sins one can commit. Thousands and thousands of sins that we commit at every single moment. But then what you're left with is you're left in this straitjacket where you feel like everything that you're doing is the wrong thing. And I've seen the result of that consciousness because I've been in it. And what happens is that you slowly regress, you wither away, especially from the exploration and especially from enjoying the world and the experiences and the gifts that you were given. And all of that starts to basically go into this singular lonely state of consciousness where you're not interacting and you're doing nothing to actually forward your level of being aware of the joy of the creation. And so many have done this now. This is why they're escapists. They want to leave the world. They want to get away from this. They want this to stop. And they're not actually seeing the purpose and having the gratitude of the purpose of why all these things are actually here and why these are like tools for us in a toolbox. All the different choices that we can make when we say even do what thou wilt, that's extended because of the range of the spectrum of the different things that can actually be done. So if we limit ourselves only to one aspect of it, i.e. this is what I need to do to become better, I have a big saying for that. I was in the shower and I thought about it. It came to my mind. It said, Seven, you're trying to get somewhere that you already are at. And it said it just like that. You're trying to get somewhere that you're already at. And it reflected once again that whole thing to where, like we talked about the corpus, the superior brachium being on the back of the head. So Jesus on the cross and all of that kind of stuff and the power and the Christi and the center pineal gland and all that is like here. But every single day that we walk away from ourselves. And the same thing about the external gods and praying towards these different lion face and elephant face gods and all this different stuff that we're doing externally, when really the only true in God that you can actually have an experience with, the total supreme being that you can really connect with, would be inside of you, especially if you were looking to do it at any grand level. And so it's that thing again. We, going into 2020, the nitpicking should be over. Now, if you're a neophyte, you're just coming in, you got to climb the ladder just like everybody else. However, if you've been in this for a minute and you've seen all these ways of thought and walks of life and all this kind of stuff, and you're still beating up on yourself like you're dealing with Jesuits in the papacy, I would get off of it already and start empowering yourself with the exploration and the joy of what you've gained so far, and actually stop and take a moment and look at yourself and the people that are around you, your family. Like sometimes like people want to get out of relationships, they want to leave their kids, and they imagine there's going to be this great life for them outside and somewhere else. And the truth is that that's what the I-ness is breeding, and a world of I-ness is actually breeding, is this forever pursuit towards something that's pioneering. But as a balanced being, you have to be able to look at what's there. Like my children, my wife, my friends, my mother, this food, this ocean, these mountains, and realize everything that you're actually trying to get to, you're already there. And only takes for you to remove the aspect from your consciousness that you have not received that yet. And that becomes very important, because remember, we have to continuously, and this is, I guess, maybe a product of the conversation when we get around here next time. Just like I said, we have to glide through the cosmos and experience these different days, even days of the week, change up the colors in your clothes. Look at what Earth is doing. Earth is like one of the biggest archetypes of what we should be doing. Some people have been asking me about the diet and what should be the best diet. And what I'm saying is seasonal, a seasonal diet where you're not eating the same thing every single day for the entire year, because the planet doesn't do that. The planet, the animals that are here, which are cognates of the body that we live in, they don't do that. They forage and eat and consume things based on seasons. And so for us, if we're seasonal beings, then we get this broader palette. So we're less vulnerable for the allergic reactions that we have when we become polarized. Okay, so I hope that that's clear. Let's see exactly where we're at. I guess I have to stop at this stage. It's about 1:35. It's been beautiful. There's been a lot happening in our realities inside and out. I just want to highlight today that we should really focus on coming into unity and alignment. Like some of the stuff that we see happening in the reality right now and what's really going on have only one solution: unity. And so if we keep creating more categories and components to say why a person cannot be accepted as even being a human being, or accepted as someone that we should love or care about or think about or try to find solutions for, we're not actually going in the direction of actually finding any real solutions to what's actually taking place in our reality. And here's just the thing about this and how this is paradoxically designed, meaning that there's multiple parallels of reality going on here. If you figure this out for yourself, you will be the one that goes into a level of existence where everything around you benefits from what you've discovered. So in your self-discovery, if you figure out that all is self, you will unlock a reality of awareness of all is self. But that doesn't mean even a person next door, even a person right next to you that has not unlocked that stage of awareness, which is a gift, to be given a key to unlock that, will have that experience. And that's what, again, is the paradoxical aspect of the reality. That's why it makes it solo. That's the I-ness side of things, something that you need to achieve. And collective, something that you would want to discover and then give to others so that they begin to benefit from it in the co-creation. That's how it works. It could be confusing for those who don't have a strong grip on both aspects or the both hemispheres of their consciousness. Confusing in itself actually means that someone who is not able to fuse both aspects or bring both aspects of things together in order to create a new level of synthesis. So be the referee. You're in there with black and white, grab your whistle. Anytime that there's some type of conflict, blow it. Throw a flag. Foul on the play. This is about us getting to us, the whole thing, getting into another state. So if you're just considering your mind, if you're just considering your soul, or you're just considering your body, that doesn't make up us. You have to actually consider all of these things that you've been given, and you should look as a governor Like you're the king, Kahin, over your own consciousness. So you should basically be looking at creating mediation between all of these lands and making all the citizens of these lands, which are, of course, are the bacterias, the thought forms, etc., you bringing them all into a stage of harmony. Last thing. If there's anything you walked away from this conversation with, I want you to walk away with this specifically. Remember, all of this is energy, okay? It's all energy. So even when you get into conflicts or you experience something in your life that there was a lot of energy transferred at that moment, remember that that energy is trying to do the same thing all energy tries to do: survive. Okay? I want you to realize this. When you get into a situation and there's strong energetic signatures being used, this could be arguments, this could be anything. Joy, that's the one we were talking about earlier. Find those joy reference points. But even the arguments and things, they are energies and they want to survive. So how do you think an argumentative energy can survive other than by continuously reminding you of it? Now, the issue with the I-ness, because again, there's pros and cons, the I-ness likes to focus on those things only, because what the I-ness is like, I don't ever want that to happen again. Okay, that's why the I-ness gets stuck a lot. It never wants that to happen again. So what'll happen is it'll keep reminding you, remember that bad thing happened? Remember blah, 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 and so and so? This is why I don't deal with those kind of folks. And the reason why it's doing that is because it thinks, because it doesn't really function like the subconscious and the collective side of things, it thinks that if you somehow forget, remember, it doesn't have tie into how this side works. So it thinks that if you forget, you'll let it happen again. And it doesn't want that. So it will consistently remind you, don't ever be friends with those kind of people or it's going to happen again. And what this does is it creates a wheel of what we would call somewhat of a distortion. You're only thinking of the bad things that have happened. And of course, it wants to survive, so it keeps repeating it. But notice how the consciousness, and this is where do what thou wilt truly should come into play, it can still choose what it wants to focus on. It can either focus on all of the bad times and the things that it doesn't like, or it can focus on all of the great times and the things that happen in a great way. But notice how it seldom brings up those times. That's the deprogramming. The deprogramming is every time the mind starts thinking about the things that it doesn't want to ever happen to it again, and so they were bad things, and it starts refreshing you of that, throw a flag on the play, blow the whistle. And the penalty is to actually think of that time, and even if you need to write them down, the times where you had a good time. Because here's the interesting thing that's also found out. When something happens, right, let's say something happens right now, okay? My mind really will, and my body, my consciousness, and through that experience, will encrypt that experience into a code, okay? This is what we're calling DNA. It will actually make it into a liquid code, okay? So the first day that it happens, it's in this liquid code, but the next day, that code must be compressed. That's what the DNA is doing. It has a compression feature. It's just like when you put these videos and pictures and all that kind of stuff, it's like that becomes the biggest problem with your computer, right? It's like more space, more space, more space. So the only thing that they've brought forward to handle that system is compression. Right? And so the body or the consciousness, the DNA, has this form of compression. But here's what happens, though. When it compresses, there's a lot that's lost. It's just like you taking an image and then trying to remember that image 2 days later. It starts to become vague what that image looks like. And then when we get a year down the road, the actual representation of that image of the situation that really happened is either almost gone or bears no resemblance to what really happened in that scenario. So this is what it's like also with having a lot of distorted memories and bad memories, is that they truly don't actually bear a resemblance to really what happened and all the integers that were involved that created that situation. The only thing they have is fear. I don't want to ever do that again. I never want to let that happen again. And what this does for such a beautiful mind is it puts a lock on the beautiful mind where it does stay stuck in this tense, into this loop where it keeps looping around those memories. And the only way to break yourself out is to go into the stronger codes, because you'll notice that those times that you had that were great times, they're almost as clear as if you were recalling them the day you experienced them as you start to sit in them. And that's why I'm saying it's a meditative technique. You can do this before bed. Start thinking about the great times that you've had and then blow it up in your mind's eye like an IMAX scene. And then experience it all in that moment and keep repeating it back to yourself and watch how the body starts energetically responding to that moment as you keep playing that back. So this kind of technique, this is the techniques of masters. This is how you get true control of your consciousness, because of course, the one who is actually in the stage where they're constantly attracted by life and excited about what's going on, those are the people that actually get and manifest the things that they want and get those around them to assist them with what they're doing. Not people that are just running around like Eeyores and emos and into the I-ness and selfish and all this kind of stuff and complaining all the time. And then they expect to get something happening that way. You can't do it by yourself. You see what I mean? Because that's the I-ness. The I-ness is attempting to accomplish something by itself and then likes being lonely. Remember, this is a natural disposition. So it literally wants to find, oh, nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me anymore. I never found the love of my life. Nobody knows the truth but me. That's the I-ness side of things. And again, like I said, it has some benefits, but there are also some character flaws. So we can only balance that out by having a full range of consciousness, being whole-brained, if you may. And then also remember, you got the reptilian, you got this lizard, you got this mammal, you got all of these subfields all intertwined in a matrix. And even when you dream, you go into some of those worlds. Like one of the big things that I feel is happening right now is we're merging with this adjacent planet, which I believe is Venus. And a lot of the subconscious activities that are taking place here in our minds are the conscious activities that are happening on that planet in the bodies that we have there. And now, because this whole thing is coming into a lot more clarity, and there's a big merger which is happening in the consciousness of the Cadman, if you may, the grand body that we all reside in, we're going to get a merger of all these planetary bodies and what they really stand for and what they mean. And that's going to give us this 2020 vision, if you may, this vision of clarity of who we really are, what we really came here to do, and how much we have to do it with. So, wholeness and balanced vibrations, everyone. I trust that that would be instrumental to your growth until next week. Obviously, we'll be coming in again on Sunday, is it? Yep, same time, same channel. There was some stuff that's here that if you wanted to jump in on the podcast, that you can actually now go to either Spreaker, you can go to Apple Podcasts, you can go to Spotify even, and you'll actually find the podcast there so you can listen to it in audio just in case you wanted to recap on some of this of what was presented. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Oh, wait, giveaway. Wait. Okay, one second, everybody. There is a giveaway. Somebody's like, no, I want my stuff. All right, so we're about to do the giveaway right now. So today what we have is I'm going ahead and click the offline button. So we have a semester of the university, and we're going to actually give away some regeneration salve. So let me get that up on the screen here. And we'll do that. Also, those wanting to know a little bit more about the regeneration salve, you'll find that here on the Secret Energy page /regeneration. And these are the products that contain the regeneration salve. And as I said, this is not something that is like a sales pitch. In fact, we've done almost no commercials or anything, any kind of post or anything around this element, only because we're so busy doing other stuff. But when I say that it works, it works. And so without me getting into some legal trouble by saying what it can do, I'll just leave it for you to try it out. It is here, but let's do our giveaway. And so let me go here first to Mr. Nightbot and let him start populating who's going to get into the giveaway today. So how this works, and this thing should be populating already. Let me see what's happening. What's up, giveaway? Okay, so how this works is, and I guess the giveaway works when we go to the actual screen. So if you want to be entered into today's giveaway, you only need to enter something into the chat box, like wholeness, what's up? Yeah, I think some of the stuff you said today will work. I really like this. I'm going to check out the podcast. I see you next week. Wholeness and balanced vibrations, all is self. Anything that you put in there will actually enter you into today's giveaway. So I'm going to give a few seconds for those that are just jumping in, still on the line with us, to actually put themselves into it. And again, you do that by you can type a period into the chat box and it'll work for you. So let me just go ahead and pull up that screen real quick and check him out. Okay. Lots of harmony going on in the chat today. Love to see everything in alignment and in tune. What a journey, right? And it just keeps unfolding. Like, I'm never now at this point like, and this is it. This is the final. They'll never get me like that anymore. Like, I know for sure this is infinity and we are to pace ourselves appropriately. Like, I definitely don't want to be all emoed out, as I say, all distraught all the time in infinity, not, enjoying life, enjoying the experience. I'm definitely not going to go through infinity like that. So this is now the time that we become aware of just how much power we have. All right. So we have 130 eligible users, and I'm going to go ahead and start this process. So yeah, let me go ahead and do this. It's always a moment for me. I just want to make sure we get as many people in as possible. All right. So we're going to roll it. So right now, what we're going to give away first is either semester 1 or semester 2 of the university. That will be of your choosing. You can also gift it to someone else. And for those who want to know where the university is at, it's actually on the Secret Energy site. You can pop open this tab right here. Actually, that's the university login. You can pop open this tab over here and you can go to courses and you'll actually get to the university. Let me put that on the screen here. And you'll get to the university and you'll get to all the courses. As you know, we did semester 1, semester 2. I've been feeling semester 3 is coming, baby. For 2020, I feel like there's, don't quote me on this, but I feel like there's only going to be 3 semesters. I feel like that once I come in on semester 3, I'm going to be able to summarize all of the topics that we bought semester 1 and semester 2. But I just said earlier that I'm going to stop saying that it's going to be the end. But semester 3 is coming. There are some things that I feel are worthy of a semester 3. That's really how I do. Is that some folks just keep releasing stuff over and over again. It's been about 2 years since we've done an university semester, and it's really been for me that long to gain a certain level of awareness that I feel like will give us an enhancement over semester 2. So it's not all about just releasing more and more universities. For me, it's about being more and more precise and gaining a greater level of synthesis every time an university is released. And I feel like that for sure one is coming on. Also, if you just wanted to dive into the courses individually, you can, and they are here. And there also is a syllabus, and what that is, of course, is a layout of what exactly you'll learn in the university. For those that want to know about the contents of the university, you actually find that here. So you'll see what every single, I guess you can call that course inside of each university actually contains and what it speaks on and talks about. So powerful information for anyone that especially is just getting started, and even adepts alike that want a more succinct approach at what exactly is going on within our curriculum. So you'll find that here. So let's roll it. All right. Wow. 260. I'm glad I waited. That doubled up. So, all right. So we're going to hit it right now. We're going to give away 2 semesters. And here it goes. So our first winner is Quintez Burks, Wholeness and Balanced Vibrations. Yeah. You have been able to somehow acquire the most valid and the most precious ticket to the university. I got a golden ticket. All you got to do is hit us up in the bottom of any of our websites, predominantly secretenergy.com. In the bottom right corner, you'll see a tab that will get you to support. Go ahead and ping us in support. Sean will more than likely hit you back and say, yep, we got you covered. Give us your name, your email address. And since this is the university, then that's all we need to go ahead and get it to you. And we'll send you an email when everything is loaded. So that's one university. You can also choose Quintez to give that to anybody that you would like. And you can also have a choice between semester 1 or semester 2, peace and wholeness. So we're going to roll it again. So again, that's Quintez Burks. Let me screen capture that actually, just to make sure we have that. And we're going to roll it again. There it is. That's Michael Atkinson, Wholeness and Balanced Vibrations. You've actually been able to acquire that golden ticket, again, to the university, either semester 1, semester 2, same rules, Wholeness and Balanced Vibrations. Thank you again for entering. And then finally, we're going to give a bottle of regeneration salve away today. And let me do it one more time. Roll it. Let me screen capture that. Michael Atkinson, again, the same rules apply. Just contact us in the base of the website and let us know who you are, name and email address, and we'll go ahead and get you signed up. And of course, what semester that you would like. And here it is one more time, Hunter 4D. On the hunt for that regeneration solve, wholeness and balanced vibration, that is for you. So all you would do is, again, contact us at the bottom of the website. Give us your name, your actual physical address, because we need to mail it to you, your email address, and we'll make sure that gets out to you in a timely manner. And so that's what we have going on today, family. I almost remembered, not forgot. So that's what's up. Thank you so much again for bringing your essence in on this co-creation. We've grown very strong and powerful in this time off this wisdom and experience. And we also connect with each other in so many spaces. I have no doubt that infinitely we'll continuously meet each other and greet each other and be happy about each other's presence and what we have to deliver, and continuously strengthen each other on the exploration. I can always remember that no matter how dangerous the situation was or how perilous it may have been, of course, you're thinking about it in a child's mind. When I was with my friends, I thought of none of that. So knowing me, that you found a true friend, a true guide, or a mentor, if that's what you need in your life, and that I'm always going to be in this space doing just that, wholeness.